is a collaboration between ASU's Project Humanities, which is the hand and the buttons, and you're wearing shirts. Thank the student group for representing here, the ASUSI group, and also ASU's Socially Engaged Practice, coordinated and directed by Elizabeth Johnson, and also our community department, which is Savvy Pan, who is owned by Tamika Lamb. We have been doing this for just over a year, and it's an opportunity for us to get together and do something that's not ordinarily done in some of these kinds of public gatherings, and that is to invite people to the table to share something around a specific theme or topic. And we started a year ago, and we meet at different places around the valley. And there's no expert here. It really is about looking at those who come and the vitality of each of our voices. Tonight is something that's very different. We've never been in this space before, and we've never quite had a focus on an idea quite like this one. So we invite you to participate, and we invite you to share, and to see exactly how many different ways we experience, talk about, and actually learn from this focus on the silence. So we thank you for coming, and we invite you to participate and to share your vital voice. Thank you. Oh, and our facilitator tonight is, we do have a facilitator, and our facilitator tonight is Professor Amira de la Garza, who is a professor in the UNOW School of Human Communications, as well as a scholar in transporter studies. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
In silence, no speaking. Can you hear me now? It's ironic. You have been given a scroll, and the scroll is not to be opened until the moment that I ask you to open the scroll. But we're going to begin to interact with each other without saying a word or using any hand motions. What we're going to do is we're going to walk freely through this space. You do not need to walk in a circle. You can walk in any direction that you wish. But what I do ask is that you walk with the goal of engaging with the people that are here. And to do that, we ask that you do that by taking the time to see the person that is past, or you another person. And then if you continue to do this, and everyone is moving, just notice what you feel yourself saying and hearing in silence. So we'll begin in the light, and as you know, the colors have been shifting. We'll continue just really working through that, and then when I will ring a bell, and if it can't be heard, I will say, I am ringing the bell. And when I say that, then I will want you to feel who it is that is going to be your partner for the next phase of the exercise. Whoever that is, then go with that person and find a place to sit down. So if I Jessica here, one of my students, so she gets to do what I tell her. So if she and I were walking and the bell rings, then we will go and sit down and just wait for the next part of the instructions. Sit together. So you may not wind up sitting with the person that you came with, right? And you may not sit in the same place you're sitting now. This is a very safe space, and your purses, your bags, your papers will stay where they are. So go ahead and begin, and welcome you here. And I will not say anything from now until the moment that the bell rings when I tell you that I am doing that. Now take your scroll and together read your scroll and share your scroll. Share what they mean, but do not say a word. You and your partner will stand up and begin walking around again. The next time you hear the bell, open your scroll and show it to your entertain that as we talk about silence. And the first thing that I'd like to ask to have you engage in a discussion and to help us to understand different ways that we are thinking about and feeling and remembering and envisioning and even hearing silence is to ask you, what was this experience that we just had like for you? Was there anything that you'd like to mention? Anything you'd like to ask or share?
I think we're in all in a silent mood.
So silence engenders silence.
At first, when we were not, talking quietly, I had this very strong urge. I wanted to talk. I wanted to be loud. I wanted to make some noise. But as soon as you ask, does anyone want to share? It's like, okay, we can do it.
Being asked to speak brought the desire to be silent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe it's not like true silence, but you hear like the train.
To your piece, and maybe it's not like true silence because we can hear the train, we can hear cars. Yes.
I think a lot of times in our daily lives, even with me, when we're walking, I don't think I see people all the time. So it was really nice to walk and actually acknowledge a person as they pass, as opposed to in my normal life. I'm just walking, thinking, I'm in my own head, thinking about where I have to go. So I thought it was neat to stop and recognize someone before you pass.
Thank you. Yes.
And off what you said, it's so true because after just walking around a few times, I feel like I know people's faces so well. If I were to see any of you like out in my daily life, I would recognize you. Oh, I've seen you before. Whereas people I pass by every day,
And for those of you that might not have heard, he says that because of the exercise, he feels that if he saw the people he looked at here, that he would recognize them, whereas people that he sees just passing by, he wouldn't necessarily remember them the next time he saw them, or even know that he saw them again. Yes.
Because of the exercise, we were allowed to look for a longer period of time into the face of another person.
For me, it was a reminder of how much we are becoming scared of just staring into the eye of a stranger. You know, we kind of avoid that all the time. We avoid staring into somebody's eyes whom we don't know. So that was a reminder.
Like pin them, you might be
Yeah.
like stare at them, and they think you're weird. All of this is we don't like to stare because it has a negative kind of connotation to it.
Anyone else have anything to say about that, about how it felt to be given permission to look at someone for a longer period of time? Yes.
Yes. First, I would like to talk about the silence that we maintain. So, the silence helps to work inside. Like, there are a lot of thoughts going on. The mind is so the silence helps to go inside a little bit more calm, and gazing into the eyes is a wonderful experience. Like some people, they are like I could connect to them, like, feel something with some people. It's really wonderful experience.
Thank you. He says that it was a wonderful experience to experience, first of all, how silence allows you to go inside. That it draws you inside. But then when you gazed at someone's eyes, that there was actually the ability to connect. And perhaps because that silence was there before you did the gazing. Yes.
We started to connect in a myriad of different ways. Me and Ernesto just kind of met each other and did an impromptu little dance.
No.
It was
There
fun.
was a variety of ways that people connected.
Yeah, I bumped into Jessica. It was fun.
I'm going to say one thing because
Yes.
I know this is about silence, but I also know that it can be difficult for people to hear if we're sort of using our inside voices in an outside space. So,
What?
so I'm gonna ask if we could just speak up and project because I know that what's being said is quite valuable and everybody wants to be able to hear it. Okay, so if you could just speak up in this moment as we talk about silence, it can sort of help us understand the value of silence.
It's also a nice tension to be able to honor silence while I'm talking loudly.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
We is interesting.
I wondered if talking, I guess I kept imagining that the silence and looking into the eyes, it was not just about the eyes. It was, you know, some people were winking, some people were smiling, some people seemed to be squinting. So there was a way in which whatever was going on with the eyes somehow was speaking, even though nobody was actually speaking. And so that's where we talk about this sort of, I kept thinking of eyes being the window of the soul. And, you know, some people were sort of like, you know, giggling, and you were sort of wondering, so what's going on in that sort of space behind the eyes that was also part of the whole body. So there was a way in which the silence was not just about silence, it was actually speaking something else.
It also gives you a perspective of deaf people and how they walk around society and they can't hear anything. And we are so privileged and we can talk and like listen and all sorts of stuff. But it just gives you a perspective and how they have to take in like the nonverbals more so than what we do.
FYI, we do have signers out specifically for this occasion, and we just learned something about their code of ethics about signing.
Yes, we invited a couple of sign language experts to come in and translate for us. And when I went out to let them know that we were going to begin, they told me that they could not come in to sign because there's no one here who is deaf. And that part of their code of ethics is that they do not, they're here to communicate for the deaf, not as themselves performing. So they could not come in here, which was
We get some. They will come in and get them in the exchange.
And because it was silence, the project team felt that we needed to at least acknowledge that as a reality, because we've been in situations where we operated from our privileged position, imagining that everybody was hearing people. And so we thought when we talk about silence, we should at least be aware that there are people who may not be able to hear, so let's provide things. This has been another learning experience for us as we try to accommodate and also figure out how other people's codes of ethics work laid out.
Did anybody know that before they came here today? So one out of all of us, we've all learned something. So does anyone else have anything that they'd like to share maybe about the experience of reading the scrolls and what it felt like to have this scroll and the text on it? Did that say anything to you? Did it help you felt later?
The ones I read were just so, they were amazing, and they were by some people, some writers I knew, some I didn't, but they were just, like mine is silence is more eloquent than words. It's just like, sometimes saying nothing at all is more powerful.
Silence is more eloquent than words. And who was
It's like Thomas Carlyle.
Thomas Carlyle? So, does anyone else want to say something about the scroll? Yes.
There's a silence is only frightening to people who are compulsively verbalizing. And I think that's hard because, we don't listen in our society. Like we don't, in politics, we don't listen to each other. In relationships, interpersonal, we don't listen to each other. So if you're constantly speaking, when you're constantly speaking, you have no ability to let anybody else's ideas into the atmosphere, into your environment.
And who was the quotation?
William Burroughs.
William Burroughs said that silence is only
frightening to people who are compulsively verbalizing.
It's one of the hardest things to learn as a teacher is to be quiet so that the class can talk.
There's something about silence that makes people nervous sometimes too. Isn't there kind of a nervous silence?
Feel it. The
Here
words,
they call it
they're
a pregnant pause. I don't know if that's necessarily a nervous silence, but there's something about
you think of a woman, you have the belly, but there's something in there. So maybe someone just said something really profound, and there's a pregnant pause because you want it to sink in for people to get it, because it's so deep that if you just hurry up, they're gonna miss it, or they can't fill it in. Versus a date, like you're on a date with someone you just met, and it's just that awkward silence because you don't know what to say. You're two dating, you don't know each other enough, so.
Or in your head, you may be saying something.
Yeah, or maybe you're saying, I want to get out of this date, yeah, but it's that awkward silence of not knowing what to
You
say.
could probably have an awkward pregnant silence.
Right.
Right.
I don't think it's always necessarily awkward though, because I heard someone once talking about the last moments of Martin Luther King's life, and they were telling about it from a perspective that you don't typically hear, about how he was clowning around with his friends in a hotel room, and they'd had a pillow fight and feathers all over the place, and then they were talking about whether they would go for dinner that evening, and the hotel, somebody would be on the balcony shouting down to somebody in the parking lot, it's kind of cold tonight, bring your jacket, and there was a point where in the midst of all that normalcy, a shot rang out. And all you could think about was the world change. It wasn't just about trying to envision what had happened at that moment. It was trying to envision the disappearance of something.
What had just been.
What had just been.
Yeah.
And trying to gauge the sense of loss. It was just huge to our time. And that silence could have gone on for longer. People who heard the person talking, some people started crying.
Thank you. Yeah, Woody Allen says, I'm going to read you mine, and then those of you who would like to read yours, and before we begin with the sharing you brought to share with us, God is silent. Now, if only man would shut up. Woody Allen. Yes.
I just noticed that a lot of the things that people wrote about are the benefits of silence, right? So a lot of things that are, because silence is more eloquent, that this, silence is only comfortable to those, who speak impulsively and all this, like, all of the benefit of silence. With it feeling like speaking, silence has value that's not recognized. But I think that there is the other side of silence as well. That sometimes people are silenced, or there's sometimes silence is not a good thing. And that I can see that represented in the quotes that I found. I found something with the beauty or the benefit of silence, but not necessarily about the detriment of silence as well.
Does anybody have any quote that has something about a detriment of silence? Or well, I think of Woody Allen, God is silent. Sometimes people are pretty upset because God is silent.
Yeah, maybe she goes, show them a sign sometimes. People show me a sign, yeah.
So I think we can interpret this in different ways. Maybe it's a detriment, maybe not. It's just the true genius shudders at incompleteness, imperfection, and usually prefers silence to saying something, which is not everything that should be said.
Oh, you guys are all thinking
Same one. So sometimes we're quiet because we're wanting to say something that we think will be complete or perfect or right. So we hold back and then nothing is said.
The famous one about something about because I remained silent, I was also complicit in whatever happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's a choice. I think you said it. I think the positive, silence is positive when you have a choice to remain silent, but it's negative when you are forced to remain silent. I think that's that other side of it. And I'm sure.
Have be about being silent. So what is that like? You don't need to tell us any really deep private situations if you don't want, but what is that like to have chosen to be silent and then felt that's kind of stuff?
But is that really silence, though? That's what I'm trying to get at, is how are we looking at different layers of silence? Because silence is not the absence of sound. Because in the case that you just referenced, just because you didn't say speak out or act out or behave in a way to counter something where somebody else was silent. Let's say we talk about privilege, and somebody has done something and you know that that's wrong, but you chose to remain silent. I'm wondering if that's really an internal silence. That feels like that's not really silence if there's something inside that's somehow challenging the way you behave or didn't behave. Is that really silence? Is the absence of voice silence?
I think that's still silence. When you wanted to speak and you chose not to, and maybe silence in your actions and your words. Maybe it's both, but maybe you're saying something in your head, but no one can hear you. You know, so
Well, you can hear you.
yeah, you can hear you.
That's what I mean.
But then are we ever mentally silent?
Like what?
Are we ever mentally silent?
That's what I
Right.
want.
Yeah, we can be.
No, we can be, but then it's
difficult.
Very difficult.
very
There's a quote that says, I forgot what the philosopher said. I think therefore I am. There's this new culture emerging that's wrong. I think therefore I am not. Only when my mind is silent I am. And so I think it's just based on context of what you're talking about. Silence is good with your own personal struggles. If you're having your own personal development, being quiet is good. But when you take into consideration social issues, people who are oppressed or privileged, then silence isn't good. It's never been good.
It's interesting that you ask, are we ever silent? I'd say that the only time that we as individuals are ever truly silent is in death. We're always thinking, we're always talking with each other. But I feel like the only time that we do ever fall silent is in death. And is that a bad thing? It just makes life all the more worth living.
No, but going around randomly reading stuff made me wish we could do this in real life. We just walk up to strangers and ask them, what's your story?
That's right. Tell me about yourself.
Just ride the bus.
Any type of public transportation, you always, especially when you're really cramped. I think here in the U.S., the buses, you sit next to each other, but you're all facing the same way. In Spain, at least, in a lot of European countries, many times you're facing each other. And if you're taking a train, a very long train, you'll be facing each other, and you're almost forced to talk because you have nothing. You're just sitting there. So you strike up conversation and always like, oh, where are you from? Where are you going? Oh, you're from this place. I'm from here. And so you do get some stories, but not when you're walking around. You know, when you're walking, like Tamika was saying, you're so focused on where you're going, everyone disappears from you unless they're walking too slowly. But it's when you're in those public transportations that you kind of have to.
Do you feel that you really connect with the people when you do that?
Sometimes.
Depends on the stories.
What if you met them the next day in a store? Would you want to have coffee with them or would you be embarrassed?
Depends on what you told them. Sometimes people are there at that moment and they're happy to be there when you're going through something really serious and you feel the need, you can tell them because you know you're probably never going to see them again. But if you saw them again, you might be embarrassed, like, ooh, that's so awesome.
We still seem to talk about silence as though silence is about talking. And I wonder though, even if we talk about death, for example, to me death is just the opposite of silence. Because let's say suicide is one form of death. That seems to be the ultimate sort of sound that you can never ever not hear again.
But aren't
So
you just...
how is death? I mean, that's what I'm saying. It doesn't feel like silence is the absence of not being able to talk.
Maybe the act of suicide is an act, but after that, you've silenced yourself for eternity.
That depends on your beliefs.
Well, and you said, I mean, we talk about literature, we talk about songs of people who are dead. I mean, we have memories, you talked about them. I mean, there are ways in which memory is not about death. I mean, memory is about life. That's how things sort of exist. So there's a certain sort of finality that I'm hearing in the silence, is that there's really no such thing as silence, is there? I mean, you can be silenced, but that's like, I mean, you can equate that silence also to death. I mean, if you talk about somebody who is forbidden to get an education, or you're silenced because you're a woman, or you're silenced because you're this, and you don't have a chance to talk, that doesn't mean that this is not, that there's silence inside your head. And I'm thinking about that in terms of sort of the cultural differences when it comes to silence. I mean, there are assumptions that many people are making as we're looking people in the eyes, because that's not always a sign of respect to look people in the eyes. So that's what I'm saying, is that there are ways in which that was speaking volumes, although nobody was saying anything. So, you know, being silenced and being told that you can't talk or you can't go to school, or I'm thinking of Jim Crow laws where, you know, no Negroes, Mexicans, or dogs, those awful, or colored over here and white over here. There was certainly a way that you couldn't contest that, but I don't know if people were necessarily silent just because they couldn't speak.
Kurt Cobain killed himself, but I would say he speaks more loudly than ever before.
So some voices
music.
are louder after death. Yes.
Music still lives
Yes.
today. He killed himself.
Yes.
So regarding the, have you ever can silence your thoughts? I would say meditation is a way where you silence your thoughts.
Exactly.
So that's one way. It's like people misunderstand that meditation is a way where you're like, you close your eyes and you say, okay, I'm not going to think anything. I'm not going to think anything. It's not like that. It's like you completely give in to yourself and feel that, okay, and that's where you feel absolute silence. So meditation is one way which you can actually go into complete silence. Silence your thoughts, just shut down your whole
Where
system.
you're silent but not dead.
Sorry?
Where you're silent but not dead.
Yeah, silent but not dead. Exactly.
And it's hard.
It's very.
It's very hard. It happens very little sometimes. Sometimes.
Not exactly. It's just that you just have to give in. That's all. You just have to give in to it.
Yeah, it takes time to learn.
It takes time too, because everybody thinks that meditation is all about closing your eyes and saying that, okay, I'm not going to think. That's where everybody goes wrong. And they're not doing the act of meditation properly. It's just that you close your eyes and you just give in to yourself. That's where you feel that you're absolutely in meditation.
Well, you mentioned you had to practice.
Practice in
Okay, so how many of you have, other than the context of meditation, have ever thought of silence being something you need to practice? And how have you done that? Yes. Yes.
When I was younger, I used to get kicked out of the library at my school because I couldn't stop talking. I would talk too much. So in middle school and like even in high school, I wasn't allowed in the library after a while. The librarian recognized me. Like, are you gonna be quiet this time? Yes. And then like 10 minutes later, 15 or whatever.
You were. Yes.
My second vocation has been to be a civil rights organizer with different ethnic groups, also class groups. And so as an organizer, we call ourselves the next people, because our role is to listen and to draw out the people that we're talking about. So listening is a form of silence.
Listening is a form of silence.
For me.
Very true, yes.
Yes.
My practice is when I listen to music, that is my practice of being silent.
So sometimes through silence we can hear.
Yes.
I'm just laughing to myself because I'm thinking about being in different environments where I don't think people would describe silence as the absence of noise. And so, I'm talking about black people. When they go to the movies, there's a culture. And I know that I've gone to see the same movie with audiences that were predominantly white or predominantly black and Hispanic. And there was a steady hum. And it did not detract from the movie experience. It actually enhanced it. Sometimes sometimes you heard 500 people gasping at once. No, he didn't. Oh, you know, it's like, oh, you know, everybody was saying it at the same time, and you could feel the energy in the room. It was like surround sound.
Yeah.
And there are other places where you felt like you couldn't express yourself. You're like, because nobody else was expressing themselves, you would be disturbing the quality of the experience. And I do remember one time going to with a friend of mine, and we thought we were quiet, you know. And someone was so angry, they started kicking the back of our seat in the movie theater. And we were like, you know, they were provoked to violence. It wasn't like they were tapping or saying be quiet. They were so disturbed by the fact that we were even whispering, they violently kicked the back.
Was the kick silent?
Oh no. It was loud. And it was like, you know, like, no, he didn't.
Right.
So are there ways we move
different
our
reaction.
body that are more silent than others? Are there ways that we move our body that are
So,
silent?
I think so. But I also think there's a degree of what's accepted culturally. Like, when I hear his story about being at the library and being kicked out over and over again, that pisses me off. I know a library is supposed to be a place of learning, but there's all kinds of exchanges that are happening in a library. And so I'm asking myself, was he disturbing someone, or was he disturbing someone's perceived culture of the library? And why wasn't somebody talking to that little kid who kept coming back to that place? He was drawn to that place. He wanted to talk to somebody about something. Why wasn't somebody having a conversation because they could have guided him on how to have that conversation, kicking him out of the environment?
Yes, I'm a big
What I'd like to do right now is to invite us to continue having an exchange and a conversation this way. And in addition to that, if you brought something that you want to sing, dance, read, share, to feel free to come up here to this magical space here and share it with us. Or if you just find yourself thinking about something that has been stimulated to this dialogue, if you want to share that, you may share that. If you don't want to come up here, just make sure that we know that you're about to speak. I'll try to keep an eye out for you if you're trying to get my attention. So if you get a chance to share what you'd like to share.
We're giving you a second one just for more thought.
You're talking fast.
Well, and you're welcome to share one of these too. If you disagree with it, agree, or just want to read it out. Everybody has the potential to share each.
I'm gonna say two. I brought two quotes that I really like. I don't know if these are in some of the rooms that I have. Here. Just two quotes. You guys tell me what you think about them. The first one, it's talking about actually speaking, but sometimes when I think of silence in action and also in words. But one is by Audre Lorde, and it says, "When we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid, so it is better to speak." That's one. And then Maya Angelou, as artist, I love this one, saying, there's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside of you. And as an artist, I love this one because if you're an artist, whether you paint or you sculpt or you write poetry or music or stories or you're a graphic designer, your art is your way of speaking, and any time that someone tells you no, or that's not good enough, or you're not good enough, I think that it keeps that story inside of you, and so you don't speak, whether it's words or it's your action of creating whatever type of creative thing you've created.
What did you like about the first one? What resonated with you with the first one?
Oh, the first one, I love Audre Lorde. How many of you guys know who Audre Lorde is? Okay, amazing activist, just everything. But this she gave at, I think it was the cancer. She was at a woman's kind of thing talking about silence and her just being black, being a lesbian, being a woman. So all of these kind of three things where she was like so many times in her life as a woman or as a lesbian or as being a black person, she was silenced or felt that her actions were not heard or that she was not respected, for all of those things. And I think being all of those, except for the lesbian part, but being black, being a woman, and I would say being younger, I sometimes feel that when you're younger, people more mature in age don't necessarily take what you have as wisdom or feel that you have anything to add to the conversation. They just assume, oh, you're young, you don't know enough yet. So that resonated with me, is sometimes as young people, as women, as minorities, we don't speak up because we're afraid. And I think we need to speak up. Because again, we're never going to stop being afraid, but at least our words are being heard.
I'm gonna read you a very short Norwegian poem. It's called, and I think I will read it to you because the point is that it is not always about words. It's called You Are the Wind. I am a boat without wind. You were the wind. What was the direction I wanted to go? Who cares? Who cares about directions with a wind like that?
Is that yours?
Pardon?
Is that your poem?
No, it's not mine. It's a Norwegian poet called Olav H. Hauge. And he writes very short poem like that.
What made you choose it?
Yes.
Pardon?
What
made you choose it?
Oh, as I say, I think he's, of course it's poems, he has words, but he is using very few words, and I think what this poem is telling about is, as I said, that it is not always about words in human lives.
You want to read it again for us?
I can try.
Yeah, read it again.
Did you hear me, or of course I have this accent of mine, but
No, it's just powerful. It's powerful.
okay, I'll try. I am a boat without wind. You were the wind. What was the direction I wanted to go? Who cares about directions with a wind like that?
Yes, come on up.
I can stand you?
Yes.
Fine. Okay, these are just a few lines I had penned down to tell you all a bit about myself. I come from a coastal state called Goa from India, on the west coast of India. And in the month of May this year, I went for trekking in the Himalayan mountains towards the north of the country. And they are gorgeous. I mean, they're one of the world's best places to do trekking in. And I went there for a 10-day trek. And 10 days in a setting like that can put the worst of us in poetic mode. So, the reason I want to read this is a lot of what I wrote was felt in the silence of those mountains. As you all know, India can be very chaotic. So when you go in that kind of silence, it really makes you think. So I felt a lot of emotions, so I want to read them. I have seen beauty I can't describe and felt things I can't put in words. But I'm pretty sure if there's paradise anywhere on earth, it's probably not much different. I have heard my heart beat out loud and felt every breath bring life to my lungs. I have felt the struggle to take each next step and reveled in the little victories they have brought. I have felt small in the company of majestic mountains and felt blessed having tea looking at sight fit for gods. I have felt humbled realizing how small we are, yet felt scared at how big an impact we have. I have hung on to dear life on near vertical slopes and then seen the local people run on them without a worry. Perhaps that's the difference between them, the sons of those hills, and us, privileged intruders. I have seen trees grow impossibly tall and seen birds fly impossibly high. I have seen humans live in impossible isolation and yet see all of them flourish. The mountains have taught me a lot too, to only take ahead what's really needed and leave behind what's not, to set my mind at that one goal and do whatever it takes to get there. I have met some wonderful people and heard their wonderful tales. I have learned that your age has nothing to do with the age of your heart.
and that you don't need to have a perfect life to have a perfect smile. I came here alone, but I'm glad I'm not going back soon. Our life is as beautiful as the number of blessings we count. Being here right now, I feel privileged. For if there is paradise anywhere on earth, it's here, it's here, it's here. Thank you.
You know what crossed my mind as he was sharing this is how often we read works of art, we look at paintings, we look at what people have created in their silence.
Yeah.
And that when we share what comes out of our silence, it's pretty powerful. This was incredibly powerful. Do you relive any of that when you read it? Do you?
Yeah, I relive the entire thing. I mean, in fact, I wrote this on top of the mountain, just looking at all of it. So it brings back all those wonderful moments. And all of them were in impossible isolation and silence. So there's something you remember about those moments.
And it was an act of generosity to share that with us, because I think that as you were reading it, we were coming alive with the things you were sharing. And I don't know if you're comfortable having people maybe share how some of the things you said touched them or made them think of something. Is there anything that you heard in particular that moved you?
I like when you said, was it that everything we do is very, we're very small, but yet every action that we have is very important. No matter, we're not individually, we're not much, but it's important that we keep on doing good work and treating others well.
And like you said, I came here alone, but I'm glad I'm not leaving that way. I was like, found the silence that you needed, but now you can go and take it back.
I like that you said that you felt humbled by how small it seemed, but then also at the same time you felt scared about the impact that you made. And I thought that was a very poignant way of phrasing that. It is when you realize the impact that humanity has on this earth, it is something that should inspire fear.
And there's another time I felt that. I remember I had gone, there are these islands called Lakshadweep Islands off the coast of India. And these are generally coral islands which are at a threat of being extinct by the global warming. And you never really feel that when you hear about global warming and islands disappearing. It's something that's happening somewhere at the corner of the world that you never bother about. But I ventured and I went for a scuba dive. It was just a 20-minute dive. I was under the ocean. But those 20 minutes were probably the best ones in my life. Because when you're under that water, your ears are closed. You don't hear anything that's going on outside. And then you see those wonderful coral reefs and fish. You're in a different world. And for those 20 minutes, you forget there's a world outside. And then when you come outside water after those 20 minutes, you know what is at stake by the things that we talk about.
That works nicely if you're not afraid of water claustrophobia.
I know.
Because I can hear my heart beating and all that
Thank you
silence.
for saying that. I'm very grateful for people who can share that with us so that I don't have to go under the water. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Anything else that someone heard or that you have to share that you brought? You've got something over here. Great.
Everybody always wants to be first. When you're first, you get the ribbon, you get the applause, the crowd cheers. If you're second, nobody remembers who you are. Second place, the second place ribbon. Does anybody say the second place ribbon? I'm the second wife. My friends all warned me. They were shaking their heads, saying, good luck with that second wife thing, because the kids will hate you. The first wife gets everything, the house, the money, the cars. Plus, the first wife is usually a bitch and she'll make your life hell. Well, I got married, and I guess in the beginning, I would have to say that I wasn't so sure that that stereotype wasn't true. The phone would ring at 5 a.m., and it was Mary calling to talk about something she read in the Arizona Republic. And she would ask for Dave, my husband, and Dave was in the shower. In my family, you only call a 5 a.m. if someone's been in a car accident or you need a blood transfusion. Why are you calling me at 5 a.m.? So she learned not to call at 5 a.m. And I moved into this house, which was the second wife's house. It was the first wife's house. And the colors were pink, yellow, and cream, and beige. And I am so not that. I think I should be a lesbian because I have a different image of everything. And in our bedroom was a wood-burning pellet stove. Now, if you've been camping, you might have had that in a cabin. But why would you have that in a bedroom in Arizona unless you were trying to become beef jerky because your bedroom will be 150 degrees with a pellet stove? So my introduction to Mary was different. And if you ask me what we had in common, I would say absolutely nothing. But we had two boys, her boys, my boys, Blake and Hunter. And things changed when it came to the boys. They were little, they were 8 and 12. And boys would be boys. Boys like to eat. At least these boys did. And so when I came to this family, I was worried about, I thought big deal things. Race. I was a black chick. I was marrying a white dude. How is this going to work? Are these kids going to like me? How are these kids raised? Well, guess what? They cared about fried chicken. They cared about meatloaf and gravy. They cared about what was happening at dinner time. They cared about whether I was going to be home and cooking dinner. And I was so used to being a type A lawyer, staying up till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night at work. And I started getting calls at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Once Blake got home from school, and he would say, Brenda? They would call me Brenda or Smom. Smom for stepmom. I'm just wondering if you will be making dinner tonight. And I was kind of wondering what that might be. So I looked at my watch and I had to go home. And what I learned with Mary is that we could not reveal what dinner would be because we had the kids on alternate nights for dinner. And they would want to come to my house on her night if they knew that there was something else going on. And so we had a pact. No matter what night it was, we would say dinner is what is being served, and we would not say what dinner was. And Mary was the kind of person who, in the beginning, I didn't think she was part of my family, but she was actually more family to me in many ways than my family. She was like the people that I grew up with who never came to your house empty-handed. They always came with something. They knew who was there. And there's always people that come to your house, even in your family, who do nothing, bring nothing, eat everything, and then try to take everything when they leave. And Mary was the person who, when I was running around trying to cook food for 15 people, had a baby under her arm. Everybody could be watching football, and Mary would know the baby was eating crayons. Nobody else would notice. And she would say, what is that? And they would spit out Crayola crayons in her hand. And we would go outside in the pool, big straw hats, the Arizona sun, and there'd be this blue turquoise water. And each one of us would have a baby blowing bubbles in the pool. And everybody else was watching TV, watching football. And we were outside in the cool grass in the pool, baby in each arm, just enjoying each other's company. I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is that Mary was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is a very bad cancer, brain cancer. And what happened was we thought she had an earache or needed new glasses. She would sit down and miss the chair. Her balance was off. And one day she called, it was Sunday, and she said, I think I'm late for work. What time is it? And we said, it's 1 o'clock and it's Sunday. You don't work on Sunday. So we knew something was wrong. And the very next day, she was in the hospital being examined. And the day after that, they removed a tumor that was the size of a lemon. And they told her that she had 8 to 12 months to live. The good news came a week later. Blake, who was an ASU student, was accepted to medical school, Mount Sinai in New York. He only applied to one school. He didn't tell us he was even interested in medical school. And then he said, "Hey, Dad, can you go to New York with me? I got an interview." He got accepted to medical school. 2 weeks later, Hunter, who was about 4 years older, got accepted to law school. And both boys said, "Mom, we're not going to do this right now because we want to be here with you." And Mary said, "Are you kidding me? I worked my whole friggin' life for this. You get your ass to school. You can call me, you can Skype me, you can webcam me." And they did. And you think you have all the time in the world, and suddenly you have no time. And when children grow up, they become men, and they begin taking care of their parents. And so just as she had helped them learn to walk, and dress them, and feed them, they had to help her when she lost the ability to walk, the ability to dress herself, the ability to feed herself. And they used to hate it when she would tell stories. They would have company over, girlfriends, and their mother would tell stories of all the crazy stuff they did when they were babies, how they took their diaper off and threw it at the wall, how they had friends spending the night over, and somebody peed on someone's head. She's like, "Mom, why are you telling these stories? Oh no, the girlfriends with the bad thongs and whatever." And what's interesting is when you know that you will not be there for the weddings, for the grandbabies, for the graduations, everything changes. So I will tell you that sometimes being second is the most important job you'll ever have. I will be the one telling the stories of flying diapers and toe-headed babies and girlfriends with thongs, first teeth, first report cards, first A's. I will do my best to fill the space with memories of this very special person. I'm the second wife. I'm the second mom. Sometimes being second is the most important job you'll ever have.
I was just calling Sheila. Thing. Sorry.
There was an invitation to bring something with you that inspires you, and I brought a book. It's a Dutch book, so you cannot read it. I'm here to tell you about it and to tell you why it is an important book to me. Currently, I'm in the process of writing a book on transformational leadership. And when you are writing a book, it's good that you read other books first to learn from it. And transformational leadership, I approach it from a holistic point of view. From the spiritual point of view, the mental point of view, the physical dimension, and also the mental dimension. And in this book, when I read it, I know what inner silence means. Because how can you be a leader if you don't know about your authentic self? And this book is all about how to discover yourself, your authentic self, and what dimensions you have to apply to be a leader, to make other people good leaders too. That's why this book is important, because it teaches me how to apply inner silence. Thank you.
How did you find that book?
I'm Dutch.
You're Dutch.
It's a Dutch bookshop. The title of the book is Lay Down Your Armor. So,
Lay down your armor.
yes.
Thank you. Do you have something there that you want to share with us? I was thinking about how there are some silences we didn't realize were there until we hear the stories that fill those spaces and allow us to feel things and to come alive in certain ways. And I felt definitely that way as Brenda was sharing her story about being second. I also felt it as you were telling us about being up in the Himalayas, and even the notion of the importance of being your authentic self in order to be a good leader. You know, when you think something you wouldn't have thought unless someone had said something or written something that got you to recognize that there'd been a space there waiting for that.
I guess that also goes back to this notion when you're really listening to someone or you're really listening to somebody, there is a way of being silent. If you're really listening to someone else, if you're somehow connecting with someone else, there's a certain silence. Is that true?
Well, yes. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, I want to add to that. So, as you were saying that when we are trying to listen to someone.
Yes.
Yeah. So, silence just doesn't mean that keeping mouth shut. It's trying to listen to others, trying to understand what others are saying, trying to imbibe it, trying to understand clearly. Not sometimes our mind tries to negate it or tries to think of something from the level of ego, I think. So silence for me in that case is keeping all these things aside and trying to listen and understand his intention, not just the words. Sometimes when people speak, they might not be their words might not be conveying the exact meaning. So maintaining silence and trying to listen to them and really helps to understand what they are feeling, what their intention is, trying to really get the meaning.
I would like to learn about Brenda's story where it was in fact this silent pact that was relationship causing for you and Mary, that you're not telling, you're not revealing what was for dinner. It was a silence that sort of protected that family ambiance that each of you experienced in your own way, and then you had that together.
Something to share?
Sure.
Excellent.
Okay. Who put me in your hands? Was it you? Truth speaks like a fire, but when did I lose sight of all the stars in your palms and the galaxies under your fingernails? Your face unveils the light of a nebula, glowing like a firefly with all the fire of 1,000,000 suns. You are the one holding my breath until I can't see anything but you. For you are life and love and Lord, and every word ever written and spoken and read in every tongue ever said fails to stand alone or together in a million variations before the silence of you. This silence, like a mist rising above a lake at night before a storm, collects slowly on the fine brown hairs of my arm. But when the storm comes and the thunder drums, the rain bursts forth with all the force of a waterfall, and I just can't watch it all. For your silence becomes the sound of every living blade of grass, and ant and tree and rock and root and moon throwing its head back into the night silence and shattering all eardrums. Deafening, roaring, pouring out like a lava, comes a collective shout of bottled-up praise the world must raise because I am not speaking. I was told to be silent. My day-to-day life scorned my words and my looks and my overabundant joy and rebuked me, but you're the life in a pine needle, and the rotation of planets and that sort of majesty. It took me in its hand and breathed my breath into my lungs and filled my eyes with delight. So, in light of this silence of mind, in the face of you, the world threw back its head and let out what was bottled up. My hands are full of nothing, and yours are full of me, doing nothing but examining your fingerprints. If I throw back my head and laugh and shout, I am a fool, and the world shakes its head and signs for people like myself, but I will not submit to chains or cold rains when silence reigns. I am changed, alive and on fire, and the mire is gone. I leap from grace to grace in the light of your face, and in the shadow of your wings I will sing.
Did you write this?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what is your name?
Holly?
Holly.
Yes.
Yeah. Holly is I go to an open mic called Inspire. Infuse. Oh my gosh. And I went like a week or two ago, and I saw her. I was like, oh, she read this piece, and I was like, you have to come. We're having this amazing event called Vital Voices. It's about silence. I was like, that is such a great piece that fits this environment, and so I thank her for coming, sharing. Thank you.
You mentioned that, Tamika, since you're one of the three collaborators that we. Some people may be wondering why we chose silence, given the year of other events. We could talk about Vital Voices. Why would we choose silence? So you want to talk a little bit about how we sort of came up with that as a team?
Yeah, I think with Vital Voices, it has voice in it, so that already implies sound. But I think we try to think about things from different ways, from privilege, from gender, from just, and we thought about silence because we're like, this is the other part of the conversation. Not everybody feels like they have a voice or they have a choice. Sometimes it's your choice to be silent, and sometimes you were forced. And there's so many things that may force you, whether it's privilege, your age, your gender, or religion. And we really wanted to be able to have a space to talk about those things in a not kind of in an open way, because it could get really crazy if you start bringing certain things out. But have it in this space where it's equal, it's open, and everyone will be able to listen and appreciate what you have to say. So,
And trying to find an image to somehow go with silence actually became part of our discussion too. Our graphic designer, JT, came up with the image that some of you may have seen, which is it's like the EKG signs. And depending on the audience, actually, I think our EJ, were you one of those? Somebody from our little group when we were talking about this immediately went to death.
Yeah, we're like, oh no.
And it was like hospital and physical death and code blue and all those things that come out of that. And I thought, well, that's an interesting possibility, because even when we talk about death, is death really silent? And what does that mean? And there are all kinds of ways that many of us die daily without physically dying, because we've been silenced, or we've been violated, or traumatized, or all those kinds of ways that silence becomes part of our existence. How do you reclaim your voice? So that's what we were hoping. And I took this to a different group, and they immediately jumped to the, oh my gosh, we don't want to go talk about death. I said, well, it's bigger than death. It's bigger than death. It's about a voice and something that's very vital, the power of silence.
And he mentioned this to me. Neil mentioned this to me when he sent me the image, and when I saw it, because I'm a communication professor and I studied language and codes and semiotics and all this meaning kind of stuff, and I thought that's brilliant. I said, because it's code. They code it, and if anything has a code, it's silence. And I think we're hitting on that in here. The fact that there's so many different ways to read it, to feel it, to express it. That there's a code, whether it's culture or class or the time of day, the kind of light, the instructions you're given. All of this is a code that helps us to know how to read not just sound and speech, but silence thought. And I thought it was brilliant.
Well, and that code part was the part that I usually went to, sort of the cultural coding and the whole notion of signifying. And I kept thinking of these ways in which I would see people in my family, particularly my grandmother, who, if we were talking in the church, Ernesto talked earlier about talking in the library. If we talked in church, no words were spoken. We just got one of those stern looks. And that put us in shape in no time. And that's what I was noticing as we were walking around, is that it didn't feel silent to me, because it felt like we were sort of somehow communicating. And I'm thinking of people who have been in prison, or people who can't talk to each other, but they can talk to each other through their eyes. You know, and I'm not talking about Tyra Banks, who's talking about, you know, they find ways to communicate.
When I first started, you know, as a dancer, as a movement person, I thought, oh well, so much of dance happens in silence, right? It's not necessarily about music, it's about silence. But actually, it's not silence; it's communicative. And right now, I'm really struck by Brenda because as sometimes people through illness lose the ability to speak, their movement becomes incredibly rich. And in my meaningful way, and I'm working right now with a woman who I don't ask what's wrong with them, right? Every time I dance with people who are, you know, terminally ill or have Alzheimer's or dementia or any of these different types of things, or are incarcerated or these places, I don't want to know what's wrong with them, right? I want to be with what is alive and there. And today, this woman, Viviana, she doesn't have access to her left side, and she can't speak. She is the most expressive, right-handed, right-sided person you ever could think. And even on her left side, you can see like the communication that happens. So I guess one thing that I just, I don't know, I'm just doing this because she did today, you know, I guess in this investigation of silence, and to pull those who cannot speak with words, but speak with their whole minds.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Body.
I mean, I'll have to share. So I went to ballet once. And it was a ballet that I knew the narrative of, but I kept waiting for some sound. And I also saw The Artist, the silent movie that got all the accolades a few years ago, and I kept wanting somebody. I mean, there was something about being in that theater and not hearing sound. Well, I think you could hear sound, nobody was speaking. But there was something, and I think that's part of the culture that Brenda alluded to earlier, that silence says different things to different people at different times and in different contexts. And I think in that ballet, I wanted some sound. And your world is sort of like that, isn't it, DJ? Your dance world, that choreography, is it about sound, about silence? What is it about?
I mean, there's often sound, right? But the way that I dance sometimes, you know, I once worked with somebody who said, you know, you don't dance to music, you need to music to dance. Because I end up making the movement, right, that has the communicative rhythm and then finding sometimes sound that goes on to it. But almost all of the movement that I generate is from story. I mean, and from the actual movements that people make when they're connected to what they say. So I mean, all tonight there's been incredible. I mean, Brenda, when you were talking about those two babies, holding the babies and the water, I mean, this is all this language that happens, you know, in us in a completely embodied way all the time. I mean, the images of throwing your head back and the way that you repeat that over and over again, and how we can almost imagine that sensation in all of our bodies, you know, as we're talking.
And I really heard it when you were talking about the hopes being on that piece of stone and then seeing the local people walk so quickly across something you thought you were going to die from. You know, this kind of, that's also, you know, your body, even though we don't see it, we see it. And there's a lot of power. I mean, yours, to share something with us? I hear silence that is speaking. No? Anyone? No? Yes? Yes. Is there enough light for you?
Yeah, I think so.
It'll change.
What I was thinking of hearing all those wonderful stories is that you also can speak with having a certain attitude, having a certain posture. It reminded me of my father being in a prisoner camp in Germany, and being a prisoner of war, they were not allowed to wear ties because, well, that was not part of the status. And he managed, by tearing down sheets or whatever, making up towels or cutting them down, to wear a tie. On every occasion they had to show up. I mean, it just came to mind that being silent by presenting yourself or having a posture that gives a message as well. I brought a poem of somebody who really is my icon, and I think he's the icon of today, who was silenced and away. And people who were in power thought that they broke him, his spirit. But it turned out they didn't. And this poem, they made a movie about it. And it turned out that this poem, he kept in his heart as being his strength and being his inner knowledge and helping him to maintain his human and spiritual, beautiful soul that he is. I just read you some verses of it. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not pinched nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. And I love those two verses that are coming. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And the poem is Invictus. And it was Nelson Mandela's lifeline.
They thought they silenced him. That's really great, because sometimes you think you silence people by taking away everything that you think they want, or by killing someone, like, killing Martin Luther King. They thought we're going to end this movement, but it actually, sometimes that act of trying to silence someone makes it more powerful. And
I'm thinking of the young woman from Pakistan, forgetting her name right, Malala.
Yes.
Yes. 16 years old. Yes. And this attempt to silence her permanently only made that voice strong. She has, and she says she has no fear, and she has this voice, and it's beautiful. That's such a good point. That was really wonderful. Sure. Did
he stepped out, but he's probably coming back.
Maybe he's rehearsing.
Right.
Yes. Anyone have something they'd like to share?
Are we good?
Yes, that's a very good question. This is, like Neil said, this is the first time that you've had an activity in this space?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's the first time I've ever been in this space, and it's probably the first time a lot of you have been in this space. How does it feel? How did it work? I mean, is there anything that it does or doesn't do for you? Yes.
It makes me feel very, like I'm observing. It's like, that's not very weird. Like how God might feel. Like you're aware that there's another world out there, but you're like an objective. Like we're here. Nobody else is here. It's just us. We're in our own world. We're in our own discussion. But we're not ignorant of what else is going on. Once we leave these walls, impacts our own lives.
It has been meditative in a lot of ways. Somehow makes this entire thing feel, I don't know, like a dream maybe.
It's also interesting at the very beginning of this, and I was probably the one who was having a problem hearing, there was something about the stuff out there was so loud. I don't know if it's the hour where things have calmed down, or if I'm able to hear better because we got somehow connected in ways that we weren't before.
I noticed that too. I noticed that suddenly, all of a sudden, we were able to hear each other
A lot better.
And I don't know if that means traffic has stopped, or if there's something in the outside that we've somehow focused on just in this moment, just in the stories, or the testimonials, the poems, or the something that somehow speaks to silence too.
Neil, you touched on something about parents. Have you guys, you talked about like your grandma in church. How many of you guys have mothers, family members, friends, like they don't say anything, but they could give you a certain look and you know exactly what that means. You know, whether it's a husband, wife, a sibling, I mean, those are some great things. It's silent, but there's nothing silent about that action. That look or that finger or the frown, and you're just like, oh, I'm in trouble. And you straighten right up. So I love that.
I'm quite familiar with Charles. I've seen it in different places. This is the year of James Turrell. Okay, he had a marvelous exhibit. He took over the Guggenheim. If you've seen the Guggenheim and you know how it spirals up, he took it over. They actually redid it, walking up, and they took over the whole dome of it. And even though there were tons of people in there was a silence. They were laying on the floor, they'd lay on the bench and look up. You would watch the colors change. Turrell wants to bring the sky down. I don't know how much you know about him. He is now living, I think he's about 78. As I say, this is his year. He's been in New York Magazine, New York Times Magazine on the cover. He's got a show right now in LA, a sky space there. One part of it is booked up, you cannot get in. It's booked up till the end of the show. A room that you go in and become very disoriented because of just that darkness. He's talking about darkness and light. And some of it might relate to creation. Just the light suddenly coming in the darkness. But the rest of the LA show you can see. He's got one in San Francisco at the DeYoung Museum. If you go there, that you're actually walking underground. He has about 100 all over the world, many, many different countries. And he owns acres and acres up in northern Arizona, which you are not allowed to visit unless you are one of his corporate sponsors. But it's taken over a volcano, dead volcano crater, and enrolled the crater, and he's trying to bring that sky down to the earth. And of course, this one is so different. I wondered about the placement, that it is so close to the road.
But it works.
None of his other spaces are like that. We have one at Scottsdale Museum of Contemporary Art, if you've been there, and you get that same meditative sense. I take kids on tours there, and they could be first graders, and the minute they get inside that space, they're being quiet. It's just made of very natural materials, just clay, cement. This one is working with a lot more lights than some of his other sky spaces. You've got a lot more LEDs going, like his piece at Phoenix Art Museum, which is up on the wall and changes over a period of about 25 minutes to different colors. But I like this space. I came as soon as it was open. I think it works best at night. It's kind of how I feel about it. But I hope that students are using it during the day. And I think tonight it has a real sense of silence and quiet. And at the same time, just heard some kind of an insect from nature, something. And then, of course, the outside of it, the garden was designed by Will Bruder, who was the one who designed Phoenix Central Library. And he's a leading architect here in town.
Thank you.
Yes, I think is there anyone else who has something to share before we begin to wrap it up? Do you have something that you know? Anyone? Yeah, I think it's as before we formally close, I think it's always really good to take some of an experience that has been silent and to hold it in some way, because we do not live in a society that is very silent. We live in a society where things are quite disruptive, where you go to a retreat and then you just like jolt back into everyday life. And I think something very special for tonight might be to try to take some of this with you in the memory of the stories you've heard, the things that you've shared, and the scrolls, the experience of looking into someone's eyes, or to even if you can't look in someone's eyes, the consciousness of the fact that potential for connection is there every time you pass someone, and to just to hold that vital voice with you, that ability with you, and to please share with the folks, the Humanities Project, anything that you experience or think of after this. Because sometimes the fruit of silence is a pregnant pause.
Yeah. or reflection.
Or reflection.
Yes.
Well, and let's thank Professor Amira for. We owe a special thanks to the Asufsi student group, so if you'll all stand and be acknowledged. They are the vibrant new student group that's helping us promote humanities among their peers, but also supporting the project. I want to thank all of you who have T-shirts, so if you would at least be acknowledged, stand so we can thank you. To also get shirts as well, and buttons, and we want you to sort of, as a friend used to say at the Black Theater Troupe, if you enjoyed yourself, then we want you to go out and tell somebody that Vital Voices, Project Humanities, Socially Engaged Practice, and Savvy Pen are doing some exciting work. If you didn't have a good time, we just want you to be silent. All right? Thank you very much.
And the shirts and the pens are
The shirts are out, and one of the students will be out. One of the Project Humanities will give you. Thank you again. Be sure to sign up at the desk so that we have your contact for the next one. And thanks our students. Members are always wearing shirts.
Thank you so much. So good. Yeah, I was just like, I was so trying, but we already kind of said, they were like, we already got us. I know, and then we were here, but then we weren't sure. We were way. Oh no. We didn't go to building 4. I think we went to like building 1. Oh, we're like, no. Yeah, I did the same thing when I came. I just remembered Terrence and Rule, and I'm like, okay, or Terrace and Rule. I was like, okay, let me, because I was getting part way over there, and then I was like, that's not Terrace. I was like, oh no, there's Terrace. So yeah, I was like, thank you so much though. No, thank you for coming and sharing. I was like, oh man, your piece is gonna do it. So when I heard it, I was like, it has to be shared. Thank you so much. And thanks for coming. I don't know if when you got here, did it change any? Because this changes colors. Yeah, it changes. Okay. We're like, maybe it's not blue. Yeah, it changes. It was like purple and blue and yellow, and then it stopped. I guess at a certain point it stops, but it was. That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.